Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're looking at an EDC fixed blade that comes in premium steels but without the premium price tag, and that is the Asher Lil Buddy. Asher describes the blade on the Lil Buddy as approximately 3 inches. As someone who tends to be a bit picky about blade length because of my local laws, that approximately is a little bit unfortunate in my opinion. I understand there's some minor variance in how production works, but as a knife company, I think they probably should be aware of and consider how a fraction of an inch can make a difference in legality for some of us. If you're caught in the wrong situation with a knife that's just a tiny bit too long, that can be the difference between being legal and a misdemeanor or a felony. So just kind of something that wanted to point out. But with that in mind, I measured myself, and if you go from the end of the scales to the tip of the blade, that is just under 3¼ inches. If you go from the rearmost point of the grind to the tip of the blade, that is about 3 inches. So if you're limited on blade length like I am, you'll want to look into how your state or municipality measures blade length and kind of decide accordingly from there. So that out of the way, on to the most exciting spec in my opinion, and that is the steel options. You can get the Lil Buddy in either S90V or 3V. So whether you're looking for crazy toughness or prodigious edge retention, Asher has an option for you. I'd like to see them add a balanced steel between the two, like maybe an S30V or a Magna Cut. Hopefully we'll see that someday, but the S90V and 3V are great options right now. The 3V models will run you about $105, and the S90V will run you $120. Currently, the 3V comes in a drop point blade, while the S90V comes in either a drop point or a Wharncliffe, and I just so happen to have examples of each of those. So this one is the drop point 3V, and the next one I have here is the S90V in a Wharncliffe blade. So the handle options consist of either smooth or milled G10 and smooth or milled micarta, and what's available on each just kind of depends on the batch that they put out. And they put these out in batches, so you'll see them available for a while, and then they'll be out of stock for a while, and then they'll come back in, and just kind of what they have in the batch is what they have. But at the time of recording, the 3V is out of stock, but it is listed as having the options of black or OD green G10, while the S90V is in stock currently in both the drop point and the Wharncliffe blade, and those come with either green, tan, or black micarta. As far as ergos go, I will get my favorite here, the S90V in the drop point, and show you I can get a solid 4-finger grip there. Definitely no issues as far as that goes. I don't have a ton of space down off the bottom, but that's really not an issue. I'm not in risk of sliding off on this or anything. It has some jimping here, which would be good for if you're using your thumb to kind of bear down. There's no forward jimping. I'm a big fan of forward jimping just because I like to use it in the pinch grip fairly often, but that's not the end of the world. It really doesn't bother me that much. The smooth scales, which is what this has, and also the 3V version, they have just a tiny bit of texture to them, not anything that's really going to be noticeable as far as like when you're using it or anything like that, but it does just have a little bit of texture to it, as opposed to the milled scales, which is what the Wharncliffe blade has here. That definitely is much more aggressive. It's going to give you quite a bit of extra grip, but on the flip side of that, if you're using this for long periods of time and you're not wearing gloves or anything, this is a little bit rougher on your hands, so that just is something to consider. But I really like the milling from an aesthetic perspective as well. I just think it looks absolutely great. All of the models, regardless of the steel or blade shape, come with a Kydex sheath, and that comes in either OD green, tan, or black. So I'm going to bring in the sheaths here. Okay, so as you can see, I have mine set up for both belt carry and pocket carry. And One of the things I'm sure you noticed while I was putting these in, you definitely get a nice audible click when you pop it in there, and that goes for each of them. Some of them it's more noticeable than others, but as you can see, like I mentioned, I have it set up both ways. And then one of the things I really like about these is the spacing on the grommets here. Because the way that they're spaced, they give you the option of either like something like an ulti clip or one of the discrete carry concepts clips. Both of those would work great on this, and you can kind of adjust it to the height. And one of the big things for me is I was able to set it so that the top of the ulti clip doesn't come up past the edge of the sheath. Because I'm one, I know it doesn't bother some people, but when I go to get a grip on a knife, I want to be able to get all the way down there. I don't want to have to be fighting this or worry about it cutting my finger or something because I'm trying to get up under it. So I absolutely love the way that they did the grommets on these sheaths. And that applies for both the Wharncliffe. I actually think the spacing on the Wharncliffe is even better. But you also have it on these. And now my preferred way of carry is belt carry, and that's what I have this one set up for because it's my favorite. But it works great either way that you want to carry it. My favorite carry setup is definitely the S90V drop point and the belt carry sheath. Now I will show you how that looks on the belt. I'll bring in my fancy belt simulator here. Yep, get that up under there. Now I carry appendix cross draw, so this would actually be on the opposite side from what I carry, but it gives you an idea of how it will sit on the belt, and that's kind of what it looks like there. Bring that more into the center. So that is what that looks like, and I will bring in one of the other ones so you can see what it would look like if you are pocket carrying. Yep, there we go. And you could adjust this to sit lower if you wanted to, kind of like I showed here. You could adjust the grommet so this could come up higher so you could carry it deeper, but that is about what it would look like carrying in the pocket. Now, if I was going to do that with this one, I probably would put it with a black sheath, but since I had the option, I can just switch back and forth. I just leave it in the tan sheath. So, get that back out of here. Ooh. These ulti clips hold on really good. I will give them credit for that. So, back to the knife. Build quality on these is absolutely fantastic in both the sheaths and the knife itself, but I'm a big fan of their scales. The micarta feels great. They line up just about perfectly on the knife with the tang here. No issues as far as that goes. And yeah, they're just very, very, very solidly built knives. Asher makes great knives for sure. Although it's not, Asher does not make these themselves. They actually source them, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But no complaints about these as far as build quality. So on to the pros and cons for me. So the pros, the great steel options. Whichever is your priority between edge retention and toughness, you have an option with this knife. The attractive and comfortable scales, absolutely love these. I'll give you a little closer look at the G10 scales on the 3V as well, because I didn't really give you a good look at those. I really think these are really attractive scales. Actually, I think if I could get these scales on the S90V, which actually I could probably swap them and do that if I wanted to, because these are basically the identical knife. But I may end up doing that. But these are probably my favorite scales out of all of them. But I'll bring these back. And the sheaths are great. They're good quality, and the spacing of the grommets is one of my favorites as far as any knives that I own, because it gives me plenty of options. And last but not least, the price on these. As I mentioned, the 3V is $105. The S90V is $120, which is an awesome, awesome deal for this steel and this quality of a knife. So, on to the cons. The ambiguity in the blade length is probably my biggest con. And I gave you that information, so you don't have to worry about that. You kind of have that, the more detailed version of that. But I think that's something that Asher should put out there and have more precise measurements on. Also, these are not made in the USA, if that matters to you. From what I've been able to gather, their knives are designed in the USA, then the components are sourced from China, and then those are shipped to the US and assembled in the US by hand, which, for the record, nowhere on their website or anything does Asher claim that they are made in the USA. It's just something that I wanted to bring up because they also aren't, advertising that they're made in China or anything like that. So just something to be aware of. Doing some research, it seems like Petrified Fish is who is the OEM for their folding knives. I'm guessing that may be who does their fixed blade knives, but I can't say for sure on that, so you will just have to do your research on that. Or if you happen to know, please let me know down in the comments. But without further ado, we'll get into some size comparisons. So up first, we have the Kaiser Smolt and the SE Izula. So you can see the Lil Buddy definitely has a bit longer blade than both of these, bigger overall, relatively similar size class though, and just a different kind of design aesthetic with the taller blade and just the more traditional lines, I would say. But that is those. And next up, we have, sorry, getting those back in the sheaths, the Waxed Wing Nymph, which is definitely a much more petite knife, as you can tell, and the Boker AK1. And you can see, again, the Lil Buddy definitely has a slightly longer blade than those, more noticeable when compared to the Waxed Wing, but definitely longer than both of them. It is definitely a little bit bulkier of a knife, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it also means that you have more material. It's going to feel a little bit more robust, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. So, get these back out of here. And last but not least, we have the Lion Steel M1. And these are actually relatively comparable in price because this one runs $120. This one ran me $130. This comes in M390 steel. This comes in S90V. So pretty comparable in price. I really like both of them. I actually think the stock sheath was much, much better on the Asher, but both are great knives. But that just gives you another size comparison. So, on to the conclusion. So, would I buy this again, and would I recommend it? Well, would I buy it again? I think we've already answered that because I own 3 of them. So, yes, I would absolutely buy it again. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. I think this is one of the best values out there as far as an EDC fixed blade, especially if you're wanting to get into premium steels and not have to pay that premium price. So, what do you think? Does the Lil Buddy have a place in your pocket or on your belt? Let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this review, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as that helps me bring you more content like this. Also, if there are any knives or other EDC gear that you'd like me to check out, please suggest them down in the comments. I try to keep up to date on everything, but there's always products out there that I'm missing. So, please let me know. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I will see you in the next video.